It was almost midnight. I was standing outside a convenience store eating a sandwich alone when a stranger ran up to me through the rain. He was completely wet, his hair was stuck to his face, his hands were shaking. He was holding a thick envelope of papers against his chest like it was the most important thing in the world. He looked straight into my eyes and said, "Please, I need a husband by tomorrow morning. I will explain everything, just say yes." I stopped chewing. For 5 full seconds I just stared at him. He was maybe 23 or 24, same age as me, dark eyes, tired face. He looked like someone who had been running for a very long time and had finally stopped right in front of me. I do not know why I said what I said next. Maybe it was the rain, maybe it was the way he looked at me, not with madness but with real, honest desperation. I swallowed my bite of sandwich and said, "Then you'll have to live with me." His name was Eli Navarro. And that night changed my entire life. My name is Noah Park, I am 24 years old. I work as a graphic designer at a small company in the city. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor. My building smells like old carpet, my neighbors are quiet. My life is simple, small, and completely ordinary. I wake up at 7, I make coffee, I go to work, I come home, I eat dinner alone, I sleep, I do it all again. I had no drama, no big story, no special person waiting for me. That night I had gone to the convenience store because I ran out of bread. That is it. That is the whole reason I was standing in that parking lot at midnight. And that is how Eli Navarro walked into my life. After I said those words asterisk, "Then you'll have to live with me," he blinked at me once, twice. "You don't even know me," he said. "You just asked a stranger to marry you," I said, "so I think we're both confused tonight." Something changed in his face then, the panic softened just a little, he almost smiled, almost. "Can we go somewhere dry?" he said quietly, "I'll explain everything." We walked to the 24-hour diner 2 blocks away. I bought him a coffee, his hands were still shaking when he held the cup. His name was Eli Navarro, he was 23 years old, he had moved to this city 18 months ago from a small town far away. He had a job, he had an apartment, he had a life that was just starting to work. And then 3 days ago, everything fell apart. Eli's grandfather was dying. He lived far away back in the small town where Eli grew up. He was old and weak and the doctors said he had only weeks left. But before he died, he had one wish. He wanted to see Eli married. This was not a small wish. Eli's grandfather was a traditional man. He had raised Eli after his parents left. He had worked hard every day of his life for Eli. He had one dream: to see his grandson happy, settled, loved. And he was running out of time. Eli's family had called him 3 days ago. They said, "Come home, bring your husband, grandfather is asking for you." The problem was simple and terrible. Eli had no husband. He had no boyfriend, he had no one. He had been alone for 2 years, working and saving and building his small, quiet life in this city. He was gay and his grandfather knew it and accepted it, that was the miracle. But his grandfather was asking for this one thing before he died. "I can't lie to him," Eli told me. He was staring at his coffee. "He's the only person who never judged me, who always loved me. I can't show up and say, 'Sorry, I have no one, I'm completely alone.'" I sat quietly and listened. "I know it sounds crazy," Eli continued. "I know I can't actually ask someone to pretend to be my husband, but I have been walking around this city for 3 hours in the rain trying to think of another answer and I have no other answer." He finally looked up at me. "And then I saw you standing there eating a sandwich, and I thought, what do I have to lose? The worst you can say is no." I looked at him for a long time. He was not lying, I could feel that. This was not a trick or a game. This was a young man who loved his grandfather deeply and was desperate and scared and running out of time. "How long?" I asked. "What? How long would I need to go? How many days?" He stared at me. "You're actually considering this?" "Answer the question," I said. "Maybe 4 or 5 days, a week at most." I looked down at my coffee. I thought about my small apartment, my quiet life, my ordinary, empty routine. Then I looked at Eli Navarro, wet, exhausted, brave enough to ask a stranger for help, and I made a decision. "Okay," I said. "Okay." I'll go with you as your husband. He went completely still. Why, he whispered, why would you do that for someone you don't know? I thought about it honestly. Because, I said, someone should get to say goodbye to the person who loves them, and I have nothing better to do this week. It was a small answer, not very romantic, not very deep. But it was true. And Eli Navarro smiled at me for the very first time. A real smile, tired and broken and grateful and beautiful all at once. There was a practical problem. Eli's family would call, they would ask questions, they would want to know how we met, how long we had been together, what our life was like. If we showed up as strangers pretending to be a married couple, everyone would see it in 5 minutes. We needed to look real. You'll have to stay at my apartment, Eli said, back on the street now, the rain finally stopping. For a few days so we can practice, learn things about each other. Okay, I said. He stopped walking and turned to face me. You don't understand, he said. I am not easy to live with, I am quiet, I don't like noise, I wake up at 5 am, I keep everything in a specific order, I don't like people touching my things, I don't like small talk, I don't like... Do you like coffee? I asked. Yes. Good, I make excellent coffee, we'll be fine. He stared at me like I was strange, maybe I was. You won't last a week living with me, he said, flat like a warning. I looked at him. I'm not planning to leave, I said, unless you fire me. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just started walking again. And I followed him. That was the beginning. Eli's apartment was small and very neat. Everything had a place. Books were organized by size on the shelf. The kitchen was clean and quiet. There were no decorations on the walls except one photograph near the door, an old man with a big smile holding a young boy on his knee. The boy was Eli, the man was his grandfather. That's him, Eli said quietly when he saw me looking. He looks kind, I said. He is the kindest person I have ever known. There was so much love in his voice when he said that, and so much fear. I put my bag down and looked around. So, I said, teach me, who am I, how did we meet, how long have we been together? Eli sat down at the kitchen table and opened his envelope of papers. He had actually written notes, real notes with dates and details. I sat across from him. We met 14 months ago, he said, reading. At a bookstore, you knocked a book off the shelf onto my foot. Did it hurt? He looked up. It's a story, it doesn't matter if it hurt. It matters if someone asks me and I laugh at the wrong moment, I said. He blinked, then he wrote in his notebook. He thought it was funny, I did not. Good, I said, that sounds real. Something shifted slightly in his expression, like he was starting to realize this might actually work. We sat there for 2 hours. He told me facts, I asked questions. I told him things about myself, real things, because it was easier to remember the truth. My job, my family, my small habits, that I always leave one light on at night, that I drink my coffee with exactly 1 spoon of sugar, that I never answer calls from unknown numbers. He wrote everything down. Then he closed his notebook and looked at me seriously. You need to know one more thing, he said. What? My family doesn't know about me, not all of them. Only my grandfather, my aunts, my cousins, they will be there and they don't know I'm gay, so when we arrive it won't just be about playing a couple, it will be about being normal to people who might not understand. The room felt quieter. Are you okay with that? I asked. I've been okay with harder things, he said, but his voice was tired. Eli, I said his name gently, I'm not going to judge you and I'm not going to make it harder, I promise. He looked at me for a long moment, like he was deciding whether to believe me. Then he nodded, once. We leave the day after tomorrow, he said, get some sleep. He pointed at the small couch with a blanket already on it. I smiled, you prepared the couch already. I prepared it before I left tonight, he said. I was going to find someone, I just didn't know it would be, he stopped. A sandwich guy, I offered. The corner of his mouth moved, almost a smile. Good night, Noah, he said. Good night, Eli. He turned off the main light. I lay down on the couch. The apartment was quiet and clean and smelled like books. I stared at the ceiling and thought, what am I doing? But it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like the most awake I had been in months. We drove for 6 hours. Eli drove, he liked to drive in silence. I didn't mind. I sat in the passenger seat and watched the city slowly turn into open roads, then into small towns, then into countryside. After about an hour, I said, "Tell me about him, your grandfather." Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he started talking. His grandfather's name was Mateo. He had come to this country as a young man with nothing. He had worked as a farmhand, then a driver, then saved enough to open a small repair shop. He fixed things, radios, clocks, small engines, anything broken that people brought to him. He always said that everything broken can be fixed, Eli said. He really believed that about machines, about people. He sounds wonderful. He raised me, Eli said. When I was 8, my parents left, just left, went somewhere else, started new lives. My grandfather didn't have to take me, he was already old, but he did. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, just for a second. He never once made me feel like a burden, never once made me feel like I wasn't his real family. I looked at him. And when I told him I was gay, Eli continued, he was quiet for a long time, and then he said, "You are still Eli, you are still mine, nothing changes." The car was very quiet. "He's the only one who has ever said that to me," Eli said softly, without hesitation, without making it a big complicated thing, just nothing changes. I didn't say anything, there was nothing to say that would be better than silence. After a few minutes, Eli spoke again. "So now you know why I'm doing this," he said. "It's not about lying, it's about giving him something to hold onto. He wants to know I'm okay, that I have someone, that I won't be alone." He glanced at me briefly. "I just want his last weeks to feel peaceful." I nodded slowly. "Then let's give him that," I said. The house was small and warm. It sat at the end of a narrow road surrounded by old trees. There were cars parked outside already, cousins, aunts, family arriving from different places. Lights were on in every window. Eli stopped the car and sat still for a moment. I could see his chest rise and fall, slowly, deeply. "You okay?" I asked. "No," he said honestly. "That's fine," I said. "You don't have to be okay, just breathe." He breathed. Then he looked at me, and for just a second his eyes were open in a way they hadn't been before. Scared, real, human. "Thank you," he said, "for being here." "We made a deal," I said. "I keep my deals." He nodded, took one more breath, and opened the door. The moment we walked in, a woman rushed toward us, Eli's Aunt Rosa. She was warm and loud, and she hugged Eli for a long time before pulling back and looking at me with big, curious eyes. "This is Noah," Eli said, "my husband." My husband. It was the first time he said those words, and even though I knew they weren't real, they landed somewhere in my chest in a way I did not expect. I smiled at Aunt Rosa and shook her hand and said it was so wonderful to finally meet her. She pinched my cheek and said Eli had chosen well. Eli stood beside me, and without thinking, he put his hand briefly on my back. Such a small thing, but I felt it everywhere. They took us to see him that evening. Eli's grandfather was in a small bedroom at the back of the house. He was in a bed with a warm blanket and soft pillows. He was thin and his face was lined with age, but his eyes were exactly like Eli's, dark and deep and completely present. He saw Eli and his whole face lit up. "There he is," the old man said, his voice slow but warm. "My Eli." Eli crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed and took his grandfather's hand. And I watched something happen to Eli's face that I had not seen in the 2 days I had known him. Every wall came down, every guard dropped. He was not the quiet, careful, controlled person I had met in the rain. He was just a grandson holding his grandfather's hand, trying not to cry. "Abuelo," he said softly, "I'm here." The old man looked past him at me, standing in the doorway. "And this must be Noah," he said. I walked forward. "Yes, sir, it's an honor to meet you." He studied me slowly, carefully, old eyes that had seen many things. "Come closer," he said. I sat on the chair beside the bed. He looked at me for a long moment, then he looked at Eli, then back at me. "You love my grandson?" he asked. The room was very still. Eli did not look at me, he stared at the blanket. I thought about lying, I thought about a smooth, practiced answer. But something about this old man made me want to be honest. I think, I said carefully, that in the short time I have known him, I have seen that he is an extraordinary person, and I think anyone who truly saw him would love him. The old man was quiet, then he smiled, slow and wide and real. Good answer, he said, not a perfect answer but a real one. He patted my hand. You stay close to him, he said. He pushes people away, he thinks he doesn't need anyone, he's wrong. He looked at Eli, you know I'm right. Eli's jaw was tight, Abuel. I'm old and dying, I can say what I want. Despite everything, Eli made a sound, almost a laugh, broken and soft. His grandfather reached up and touched his face. I just want you to be happy, Mijo, that's all I ever wanted. The house went quiet late at night. I found Eli sitting on the back porch alone, looking at the dark yard. I brought 2 cups of tea and sat beside him without asking. He didn't tell me to go away, that felt like progress. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, you answered his question well. I meant it, I said. He turned to look at me, you've known me for 2 days. Sometimes 2 days is enough to see something clearly. He looked back at the yard, what do you see? I thought about it honestly. Someone who works very hard to need nothing. Someone who is incredibly careful about who gets close to him. Someone who, despite all of that, came running through the rain to find a stranger because he loves his grandfather so much he'd do anything. Eli was quiet. That's not weakness, I continued. That's actually kind of remarkable. He didn't respond for a long time. Then why are you like this? Like what? Like this, calm, nice, you don't have to be nice to me, you know, this is just a deal. I looked at him. Eli, I'm here because I chose to be here, not because I had to be. I could have said no in that parking lot. Why didn't you? I opened my mouth, then closed it. The honest answer surprised me. Because something about you made me want to stay. The night was very quiet around us, just crickets and wind in the old trees. Eli looked at me, really looked at me, like he was trying to figure out if I was real. Then he looked away. Don't, he said quietly. Don't what? Don't make this into something it isn't. I nodded, okay. But my chest disagreed. 3 days into the visit, something started to change. It happened slowly, in small moments. The way Eli would hand me coffee in the morning without asking exactly 1 sugar because he had paid attention. The way he would find me in a room full of family and stand close, not touching, just close. The way his shoulders came down a little when I was near. His family noticed. Aunt Rosa pulled me into the kitchen on the 3rd day and whispered, he seems different, lighter. He's just happy to be here, I said. She shook her head, no, he's happy because of you. I smiled and changed the subject. But I held those words quietly for the rest of the day. On the 4th evening, Eli and I were washing dishes together after dinner, a task that had somehow become ours, and his cousin turned on music in the other room, something slow and old. His aunt appeared in the doorway. Dance with your husband, she said to Eli like it was the most obvious thing. Eli looked at her, we're doing dishes. Dishes wait, music doesn't. I dried my hands and held my hand out to Eli. He stared at it. You don't have to, he started. I know, I said. He took my hand. We moved to the small space of the living room. His family watched for a moment and then drifted away, giving us space. His grandfather was in his chair in the corner, a blanket on his lap, watching with quiet eyes and a small smile. Eli and I danced slowly. He kept a careful distance. His hand was stiff in mine at first. Relaxed, I said quietly. I am relaxed. You are absolutely not relaxed. He exhaled and slowly the stiffness left. His hand loosened in mine, his shoulder dropped, he moved a little closer. We didn't talk, we just moved slowly to the music. And I thought this is the realest moment of the past 4 days. Not the stories we told, not the practiced answers. This, his hand in mine, the music in the warm room, his grandfather watching with peaceful eyes. He's smiling, I said softly, nodding toward the old man. Eli glanced over and his whole face changed. Something warm and aching moved through his eyes. Yeah, he whispered, he is. On the 5th night, Eli told me something he hadn't planned to. We were in the small guest room. They had given us 1 bed which we had been carefully dividing with strict invisible rules. Eli on his side back to me on my side staring at the ceiling. I lied, he said suddenly into the dark. About what? When I said I haven't had anyone in 2 years, a pause, I had someone a year ago, his name was Daniel, I thought it was serious. I didn't move. He left because I was too closed off, too in my head, too *. Eli stopped. He said loving me felt like knocking on a door that was never going to open. The room was very quiet. Did he try hard enough? I asked. I don't know, maybe I just don't know how to let people in. I turned over to face his back. You let me in, I said. He was quiet for a long time. You came in through a window, he finally said. I didn't have time to close it. I almost laughed, but I didn't because I could hear the real feeling underneath the words. Eli, I said. Don't. I'm not going to say anything big, I said. I just want to say that guy was wrong. The door does open. I've seen it open every day this week. With your grandfather, with your family, even with me. Silence. You just needed someone who wasn't in a hurry, I said. For a long moment, nothing. Then I heard him breathe out, long and slow, like something had been untightened. Go to sleep, Noah, he said. But his voice was different, softer. I closed my eyes. Good night, Eli. On the 6th morning, Eli's grandfather called us both in. He was weaker than the day before, but his eyes were still bright. He held Eli's hand, then he reached over and held mine too, all three of us connected. I know, the old man said. We both went still. I know this is not perfectly what it looks like, he continued slowly. He looked at Eli. You think I don't see you after 20 years? Eli's eyes were full. Abuel. Shh, the old man squeezed his hand. Let me finish. He looked at both of us. His gaze was clear and calm. I know you came here to make me happy, and I want you to know it worked. I am happy, not because of the story, but because I see the way this boy looks at you, Eli, and I see the way you look at him when you think no one is watching. Eli couldn't speak. Whatever this is, the old man said, it started somewhere real, don't waste it. He let go of our hands. That is all I wanted to say. We sat with him for another hour, then he fell asleep, peaceful, quiet. We stood up to leave. In the doorway, Eli stopped. He stood with his back to me for a moment. Then he turned around, his eyes were wet, his face was open in a way I had never seen. And he walked toward me and put his arms around me. Just held on. I held him back, both arms fully like it was real. Because by then for me it was. We packed in the morning, said goodbye to the family. Aunt Rosa hugged us both for a very long time. In the car we were quiet again, but it was a different quiet than the drive there, heavier, fuller. An hour into the drive, Eli said, what happens now? What do you mean? I mean we go back, the deal is done, you go back to your life, I go back to mine. I kept my eyes on the road. Is that what you want? I asked. A long silence. I asked first, he said. I thought about being careful, about not saying too much, about keeping things simple. Then I thought about what his grandfather said, don't waste it. I don't want to go back to before, I said. Before the parking lot, before the rain, before all of this, I don't want to eat sandwiches alone at midnight. I don't want my apartment to be quiet the way it was. I glanced at him. I want you to keep making coffee at 5 a.m. I want to keep learning your specific order for everything. I want to keep being the person who doesn't rush you. Eli looked out his window. I could see his reflection and his expression. Stunned, afraid, wanting. Noah, he said. I know you're scared, I said. I know it feels safer to say no, to call this a deal and close the door. Then why are you saying this? Because someone should knock, I said, even if it takes a while for you to open it. The road was long and quiet. I'm not easy, he said finally. You know that, you've lived with me, I'm difficult and silent and I overthink everything and… Eli. What? I already know all of that and I'm still here. He was quiet for so long that I thought maybe the answer was no, maybe I had said too much, maybe. Okay, he said. Okay. Don't make me say it twice. I smiled at the road, a long, slow, real smile. Okay, I said. 3 months later. Eli still wakes up at 5 a.m., he still keeps everything in a very specific order. He still goes quiet when he's thinking hard about something. He still needs time and space and patience. But he also makes me coffee every morning without being asked. Exactly 1 sugar. He leaves small notes sometimes, nothing poetic, just things like bought more bread asterisk or your jacket is by the door. He sends me photos of book covers he thinks I would like. He calls me when something reminds him of me. Small things. But when someone has spent their whole life closing doors, small things are the biggest things. I found out later that his grandfather passed away quietly in his sleep, 11 days after we left. Eli went back alone for the funeral. When he came home to our apartment, because he had moved in 2 months before, he walked through the door and didn't say anything, and I didn't ask. I just made tea and sat with him. We stayed on the couch until 2 a.m. He talked when he was ready. He cried once briefly, and I didn't make it bigger than it needed to be, I just stayed. Afterward he looked at me and said, asterisk, he was right. About what? He said the door opens, he said don't waste it. He looked at me steadily, he was right. I reached over and took his hand. He let me. People sometimes ask us how we met. Eli always pauses before answering, like he's deciding how honest to be. And then he says he was eating a sandwich. I was desperate. I asked him to marry me in a parking lot. He said yes. And people laugh thinking it's a joke. But I'm not laughing. Because every word of it is true. He needed a husband by tomorrow. And I gave him something better than that. I gave him someone who stayed.